Good morning again, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. We're going to be speaking about Norman Solomon. I've been doing a little homework on Norman. He's a fellow Oregonian, it looks like. He went to Reed College in Oregon, which I know well. I went to Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington. Walla Walla, Washington is the place they like so well they named it twice. And Norman has probably heard that joke. He is 68, so he's about a decade older than I am. But what we have in common is, I said he's a so-called progressive. I'm not so sure. His bona fides as a progressive are very good. He writes for Common Dreams. There are a lot of other things I found out about him besides the fact that he is from Oregon. He also lives fairly near where I live now, so we both moved a long way east. American journalist, media critic, anti-war activist, and former U.S. congressional candidate, a longtime associate of the media watch group Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, which I've talked about on this show as the good guys. So he's got a lot of bona fides as a good guy. He was an activist, a media critic. He's been the CIA, he makes the CIA nervous, so I guess that's a good thing. It says, or FBI. He came under FBI scrutiny after he picketed for the desegregation of a Maryland apartment complex at age 14. He was already going at it at age 14. He drew further FBI surveillance for his efforts on behalf of the Montgomery County Student Alliance activist group, both while a student and after dropping out of high school. So maybe he was in Maryland in 14. Maybe he lived there. After high school, he briefly attended Reed College in Oregon, but left before graduating. In college, he began a lifelong commitment to peaceful protests against nuclear power and nuclear weapons. So he sounds like some of the people I hung out with in Oregon. Spent 40 days in jail. 40 days as part of an anti-nuclear movement. He made 8 trips to Moscow during the 1980s, including one during which he and a leader of an American group, the Alliance of Atomic Veterans, organized a sit-in at the U.S. Embassy, demanding that the U.S. join the Soviet Union in a halt to tests of nuclear bombs. All right, so he's looking good. He criticized the comic strip Dilbert. That's very good, in my opinion. Solomon's book, Target Iraq, What the News Media Didn't Tell You, co-authored with Reese Ehrlich, was published in 2003 and translated into German, Italian, Hungarian, Portuguese, and Korean. War Made Easy, How Presidents and Pundits Keep Spinning Us to Death, appeared in 2005. The Los Angeles Times called the book a must-read for those who would like greater context with their bitter morning coffee, or to arm themselves for the debates about Iraq that are still to come, and are still to come, and are still to come. And then we already talked about Institute for Public Accuracy. No, we talked about FAIR. So here's another organization founded in 1997. So, and then he was a congressional candidate, unsuccessful, but on the right side of things, it looks like, a pledged Bernie Sanders delegate to the 2016 Democratic National Convention. He was a resident of Marin County. My first ex-wife came from Marin County, and that's a very wealthy place. It's interesting. I wonder what he did for... You have to wonder what... People who live in Marin County typically are quite Tony. He was elected to represent California's 2nd Congressional District, so he was successful there. He helped to organize and was a coordinator of the Bernie Delegates Network, independent from the official Sanders campaign organization. Solomon said, "As much as we love Bernie, we don't take orders from him." Okay, that's good. I don't either. The network included 1,250 Sanders delegates, about 2/3 of the total. Sanders urged his delegates not to boo or engage in disruption on the convention floor. According to Solomon, a survey of the Sanders delegates showed that 28% felt no obligation to comply with Sanders' appeal. All right, so I'm rethinking this. I'd say it's not fair of me to call him a so-called progressive. He seems to be truly a progressive. But I have a problem with him, and it's a big problem. Besides his tiff with Tiffany, he has this article out, Progressives Need a United Front for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And I've demonstrated and written a Medium article, a number of them, about why you can't be a progressive and support Elizabeth Warren. And I will not back down on that assertion. So here is Norman looking very unprogressive to me. And that's where I based my initial reaction. I saw this article first before I dug back into his history a little bit. We're now 7 weeks away from the Iowa caucuses, the first voting in the Democratic presidential race. After that, front-loaded primaries might decide the nominee by late spring. It could even be decided by the end of February or the middle of February. For progressives torn between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, or fervently committed to one of them, choices on how to approach the next few months could change the course of history. So he tipped his hand there a little bit. Fervently committed to one of them, that would be Victor Tiffany, and that would be the Bernie or Bust movement. It's like he's trying to talk sense into us, like he's the grown-up in the room, which sounds like a diehard blue dog Democrat, not like a fervent Bernie progressive. As I've revealed in the one article in particular I'd like to refer Norman to is what the DNC doesn't want you to know about Elizabeth Warren. And I'll link to that in the comments or in the information section. As a kindred activist, he says he is, as a kindred activist put it to me when we crossed paths last weekend, Bernie speaks our language, a shorthand way of saying that the Bernie 2020 campaign is a fight for a truly transformative and humanistic future. Not me, us. That's not Elizabeth Warren. I don't see that you can be an ardent Bernie supporter and an ardent Elizabeth supporter. Elizabeth is Hillary Clinton light, and if you just want to knee-jerk and say I'm full of it, you should read the articles I've written about this. I'm not coming at this from an unsupported position. I learned some of my journalistic roots at Whitman College, which hopefully you respect. Speaking to you directly, Norman, if you didn't notice. Overall, Wall Street despises Elizabeth Warren? No, I've debunked that. That's just simply not true. They're cloaked, but they're anti-Sanders. Stop Sanders. They will do whatever they can to stop Sanders. The DNC, the Clinton machine, would much rather have Warren than Sanders. The year began with a weak-looking Senator Elizabeth Warren posing no threat to Sanders. By summer, Warren had jumped past Sanders and the rest of the field. The Washington Post's Washington Post, David Weigel noted days ago. Now with Warren's momentum fading, the two Democrats most broadly acceptable to the left have been splitting endorsements and capturing separate swaths of the electorate. Let me just say, Elizabeth Warren is in the game. She's funded by Creative Artists Agency. She's funded by the Clinton machine. She stayed out last time because Clinton wanted her to. She jumped in this time because Clinton wanted her to. Kyle Kulinski can back up that assertion. So what we have is stop Sanders in the form of Elizabeth. And she knows damn well that that's why she's in this, to stop Sanders. And so I'm questioning you, Norman. I just can't see where you're coming from here. And so this email that I'm about to leak is, I think that what we know about Elizabeth kind of tells us some things about Norman here. I know we agree that Bernie can defeat Trump is the topic of Victor Tiffany's email to Norman. And Norman says, I'd suggest you step back from claiming virtual certainty on such matters. Victor said earlier that Bernie or Bust isn't even the main problem, that Bernie or Trump is the main problem. And so because of Bernie or Trump swing voters, it's virtually certain that only Sanders could defeat Trump next year. And that's a fact, Jack. That's a fact, Norman. I hope you'll, I don't know what he's trying to say here, but the Bernie or Trump voters function as leverage, but they're a force of nature, not an organized movement of extortion like Bernie or bust. No one needs to mention Bernie or bust, a smaller fraction of Bernie's supporters than the Bernie or Trump voters, the swing voters. Those are the force. Those are the cyclone. Those are the toothpaste that won't go back in the tube. The populist appeal of Donald Trump also appeals to some Bernie Sanders voters. We've got populists who can go either way. They're swing voters. They really are swing voters, as we've had in past election cycles. In the current economy, with close races expected in swing states, only Bernie has a chance to beat Trump because his swing voters won't back another Democrat. And that is easy to back up statistically with Emerson polling and with information from the 2016 elections, where a big number of Bernie supporters voted for Trump in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania. So we know that the Bernie or Trump voters, we know absolutely, statistically, without question, that the Bernie or Trump voters gave the election to Trump and withheld it from Hillary Clinton. We know this for a fact. And so why doth Norman protest so loudly that we should not claim virtual certainty that it's going to happen again? And then Victor claps back. Why? That kind of certainty in political practice is what? Mad, arrogant, poor science? What Revolt against Plutocracy tried to do in 2016, use electoral leverage, didn't work well enough to claim credit for the defeat of the more dangerous of two very dangerous candidates, Hillary Clinton. But polling shows that the Bernie or Trump swing voters alone had the desired or bust effect. They're not organized. Swing voters are an inherent part of two-party politics. Bernie has enough inherent leverage, which combined with his constructed leverage, the Bernie or bust movement, and the Bernie or bust generation, a subculture of new voters, is numerically less than the Senator Clinton had in 2008. A full quarter of her supporters voted for McCain, but Obama was elected due to the rising unemployment rate. People voted for change of parties. Remember, add the advantages of incumbency, the rigging of electronic voting systems, interstate cross-check, and being exonerated twice to low unemployment, and you have to admit this is going to be a close contest. We are both alarmed, both Norman and Victor are alarmed about the polling showing only Bernie beats Trump, and excited. We have stopped recruiting efforts to get Sanders supporters to take the Bernie or bust pledge because he's got what we wanted to build for him last time. Bernie has had this leverage without Bernie or bust. The swing voters, the Bernie or Trump swing voters, make it a foregone conclusion. Donald Trump will absolutely, virtual certainty, will win if you try to nominate Elizabeth Warren. And it looks like, Norman, you're trying to nominate Elizabeth Warren. The Democrats will continue to rig the primaries. The Bernie blackout, the lack of surrogates on MSDNC, establishment perspective and legacy media, many candidates which are backed, as I've shown, by the DNC machinery. We've got Kamala, who's gone, and we've got Cory Booker, and Joe Biden are all represented by Creative Artists Agency, and Elizabeth Warren also has received funding from them. So, and not to mention their billionaire donors, including Elizabeth. Yeah, therefore, Trump will be reelected. That's my prediction, Victor's prediction, based on the media's unwillingness to warn the Democrats about the Bernie or Trump voters poised to help reelect the president if another centrist, read neoliberal, read corporate sock puppet, is nominated. And Elizabeth Warren, make no mistake, is a corporate sock puppet. So Democrats understand, if the Democrats are alerted, Paul Revere style, to the Bernie or Trump voters and their threat, they will be far more inclined to give Sanders the majority of the delegates he's going to need next July. 70% of Democrats have defeating Trump as their highest priority. Why not just report on that polling? You don't have to use the phrase virtual certainty if you have reasons not to, but you do have an obligation to report on the polling. I provide links below to my description of the historical and continued leverage and the context of post-World War II history of American presidential elections. This link here, I'll put it in the information section below this video. Forget Bernie or bust. Like it or not, the considerably larger fraction of voters remain part of Bernie's support, and they are telling pollsters they will repeat 2016, specifically Emerson and Morning Consult. So look at Emerson's sample sizes are fairly small, but Morning Consult doesn't have that problem. And it's very likely that Bernie or Trump supporters will be at least as opposed to corporate candidates as they were, especially in swing states, NAFTA devastated swing states, people that have had their jobs offshored. They're not going to put up with this bullshit. Bernie is a major part of the context for our bold claim. Same candidate, same leverage strategy, and both campaign and leverage builders have experience. So we're not backing down. You're not going to talk sense to the Bernie or busters, but you can't even try to talk sense to the Bernie or Trumpers. Seems like a lot of people underestimated Trump in 2016. We're not repeating that mistake. Only Bernie will include in his coalition, and he includes this in ascending percentage of voters. I have some Medium articles about this too. That Bernie or busters, Bernie or Trumpers, the poorly educated, documented in 70 years of research by Thomas Piketty, indicates that these groups will vote for a social democrat, and they will come out to vote for a social democrat. They won't come out to vote for a corporate democrat. All the green revolutionaries, if they're honest, the blue no matter who, also would support Bernie. Rhetorically, Bernie's full employment job guarantee is more appealing to working poor than low unemployment. As Crystal Ball says, let's have that debate. In other words, because he has the most leverage, only Bernie can defeat Trump in current economic and post-exoneration conditions, and Bernie can defeat Trump because he's a democratic socialist, according to the research by Thomas Piketty. Not in spite of his Western European democratic socialism that serves as an alternative to the corporate capitalism and the neoliberal order that Trump, to be fair to Trump, ran on the idea that he is going to drain the swamp and he's going to defeat the neoliberal order. Turns out he's as much of a neoliberal as Hillary Clinton, which is saying something. I know we agree that Bernie can defeat Trump. We have different opinions about the chances of an establishment candidate, including Warren. So that's what we need to talk about. We need to talk about Norman's idea, which is very divisive. It's clear to me that the reason Elizabeth is in this race is to defeat Bernie, not to defeat Trump. There's not a snowball's chance in hell that she can defeat Trump. And I think, Norman, you should know that. I can't believe that you're as savvy as you are and not know that Elizabeth can't win. The only reason Elizabeth is in there is to pull voters away from Bernie. And this is not a crazy Bernie bro talking. This is a well-educated college professor who was educated in the same neck of the woods as you were. And I'm telling you, it's not, what you're saying is not going to cut it. I don't believe in I don't think that you're arguing in good faith here. I can't see how you could possibly support Elizabeth Warren, knowing that she can't defeat Donald Trump and knowing that she is not a bona fide progressive. She's a faux-gressive. I won't bore you with all that evidence now. I'll provide it in the details below. But please do read that. Please know that you are clearly on the wrong side of this argument if you're trying to hold up prop up Elizabeth Warren as a progressive alternative to Bernie Sanders. That's just, we've debunked that months ago. You need to get on board the Bernie or Bust train. And for your enjoyment, I'll put a recording of that right now. Keep on burning.
Get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Come get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Go get on board